Welcome back. This is part two of your inverse notes. So this is just a continuation of what we had previously done. So we are talking about inverses and whether or not functions have inverses. So kind of the second part of this is if I determine that a function does have an inverse, how would I approach finding it? So we're going to actually use one of the functions that you would have graphed before. It says find the inverse of f of x is equal to 3x minus 2. So step one, if let's say you were kind of doing this from scratch, would be to, I'm going to just go ahead and write that over here, would be to determine if a function has an inverse. So we already did that. So we already did the graph, so that kind of checks off that box. So now we're ready to proceed and actually find the inverse. So the first step is I'm going to change the notation. So instead of having something in terms of f of x, I'm going to change it to instead just a y, just to maybe make it easier to manipulate. So I'm going to change this to be y. Okay, and then the next step after that is based on what we talked before. When you deal with inverse functions, the domain and range are going to switch. So what that means is I'm going to switch in my equation the x and the y where they are located in the equation. So I'm literally just going to pick up and move the x and the y and change their location. So my new equation is going to be x equals 3y minus 2. So next, whenever we typically work with functions, my equation is typically set equal to y. So I'm going to basically resolve my equation. So I'm going to solve the equation, I'll abbreviate equation, solve the equation for y. And I'm going to do that in this red, pink color. So my first step, if obviously I want to try to get y alone, is to move the 2. X and 2 are not like terms, so they're going to stay separate. So x plus 2 equals 3y. And then my final step to solve for y is to divide everything by 3, and we need to make sure that on this side of the equation that I actually divide both the x and the 2. So one option would be to leave my answer in this format. So that would be one choice. Another option would be to separate this into 2. So I could write this as x over 3 plus 2 over 3. So that's another option. And then the final thing that I need to do is record the appropriate notation. So whenever we work with inverses, the inverse notation is we're going to change y back to an f of x notation. However, we're going to do just like f to the negative 1. That's the notation for an inverse, to signal that we've just found an inverse. So either one of these representations I could write as f to the negative 1 of x equals, and I'll just use the top one, x plus 2 all over 3. So that's how you would approach finding an inverse. If you need to pause, please feel free to do so. Otherwise, your next task is to try to find the inverse of this equation down here. So I'd like you to do this problem right here, this one right here, and then I will be posting the answer to this one on the Google Classroom as well. Please let me know if you have any questions, or let Mrs. Ortman know if you have any questions, and thanks for tuning in today. I hope your notes look awesome.